Hi, welcome to the Live and Invest Abroad podcast, where we help you navigate the exciting world of international living and investing. I'm your host, Vanessa Rosenblum, and today we're going to explore one of my very favorite questions, which is if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you go? My guest to help us answer that question is Jen Barnett. Jen and her husband are the co founders of Expatsi. They help Americans figure out where in the world they want to live next. All right, let's dig in. Hello, Jen. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with me. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Vanessa. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk about my favorite question, which is if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you go? That's really what you do is you help Americans think about where in the world they could move next, right? How did
Yeah.
you get into this business?
So I am just a slightly advanced amateur at moving abroad. And we got into this business through our own move. We decided that we wanted to leave the US in 2016. We started exploring options. And what we found is that for us, pretty much every country was equal. We were open to moving anywhere on earth, just about. And if you absolutely knew, I am going to Costa Rica or I'm going to Vietnam, then there were a number of resources for you. Didn't make it easy. There are still plenty of steps to solve and figure out what vendors were the best and things like that. But in general, there were paths. Likewise, if you or somebody is in works in an international industry or things like that. But for those of us who want to move abroad and really weren't sure how to do it, where to go, there weren't any resources. And in exploring that on our own, we decided to start just making lists of what we were looking for in the world and soul searching and what do we want in terms of weather and culture and healthcare and safety and what did we want to be legal? What were the human rights issues that were most important to us? We made lists of those individually, and then we compared notes, and then we started matching up countries to each one and kind of giving them points for how well they matched with different criteria. And our idea was to come up with a top 10 list and visit those 10 countries over 10 years and moved to our favorite. Now, what actually happened was we visited our number 10 country, but and we chose it because of some TikToks I saw of some guys who had moved here and made it look amazing in Merida, Yucatan, Mexico. And when we visited, I said, why wait 10 years? Let's go now. Surely we can't be the only people going through this. And maybe we can help other people with our resources that we've put together and move now. There's nothing to say we can't still visit 10 countries over 10 years and choose another one if we find one that we prefer. But this allows us to move now. And that's how we got started.
Okay, so 2016, that's actually when I left the United States again. I saw the Trump signs in the yards, and my husband and I actually he had just gotten his US citizenship. He's Italian, and literally he'd sworn in a month before, and we looked at each other and we said, "I think it's time to go." And so 2016, you moved to Mexico. How long did it take you
Yeah.
from the time that from the time that you said we want to move to the time that you actually left? How long did that take?
8 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we only moved last year,
Okay.
and we try to make it faster for other folks by not having to go through all these steps. So essentially, we made the decision in 2016. We visited Vancouver. I don't, and we also visited a blue state. We lived in Alabama, and people, everyone says we'll move to Canada if we don't like the election. And so we went to Canada. We went to Seattle, and we just realized we didn't necessarily have a path to either, and we just didn't have blue state money. It's really expensive to live in Seattle and in Vancouver, and certainly we could put everything into job searches and things like that, but I wasn't fresh out of school, and it's just a lot more complicated. Um, and these are very competitive environments, but the biggest thing is that it didn't feel like home. When we were in Vancouver, it was a lovely vacation. We had a great time, loved to go back. but nothing about it made me feel like I was at home. And so we put it on a back burner. Then in 2020, when all that election pressure came back, and of course, we're working remote during the pandemic. And that's when I said, we could be doing this anywhere. After the election, we felt some relief, but it was just way too close to me. Like I wanted it to be a landslide like we've never seen before in history. And obviously it wasn't. And so we got serious again New Year's Eve weekend going into 2021. And that's when we started making our lists of things and developed our top 10 list of countries. We did our first scouting trip in 2022 from that list, which was to Merida. We were going to move in 2023. I was working for Expatsi full time at that point, but Brett still had a job and his company decided that he could work remotely, but not outside the country. We decided to have him join Expatsi, but we needed to build it up enough to where we could move. So we were
Mhm.
finally able to do it in 2020.
Okay, so 2024, you're now so you haven't even been there a year yet. How is life in Mexico? Is it everything that you expected or any surprises?
I'm sure that we're still in the honeymoon phase, right? But it's so much better than we ever could have imagined. You can see behind me, this is the view that I have every day while I work. And every day just feels like a gift. Everyone here is so kind and friendly and outgoing. People smile at you all the time. It's so nice to have a lower cost of living when you have a startup business. So there's this concept in startups called runway, and that is how long you can live on how much money you have. So we sold our home and had a little bit of money to put into the business and support ourselves while we built it up. And the amount of money was enough to support us for more than a year in Mexico, but only a couple of or maybe 3 months in the US.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge amount of difference when you think about how much more successful you can be with a year to perfect something versus 2 or 3 months to perfect something. And at the same time, you're stressed and angry. It's just a recipe for disaster. So we've really loved it. We've made friends. We enjoy going out. We spent this weekend at the beach. You can visit the Gulf of Mexico within 30 minutes. There are cultural events every weekend, and of course, the food.
Yeah, the food. Oh my goodness. Ooh, obviously, America doesn't feel like the safest place to be anymore. But as an American, hearing the idea of going to Mexico seems like you're jumping from the pot into the fire. Is that the expression? So, do you feel
Right.
safe there? What's it really like on the ground where you are?
Vanessa, that's a great question. I get it all the time. And I think that my perception about Mexico, I'd never been before we visited to scout it. And Brett had only been to Cancun, which is
Yeah, that doesn't count.
right, doesn't count. And what I pictured was how in the movies it's like the Dust Bowl and the bars with the swinging doors. Like I pictured it the way that when you visit Europe, people will describe what they think the US is like and what they're describing as the Old West. You hear it all the time, cowboys and whatever.
Yeah.
I think I had a similar, I knew it wasn't really like that, right? I knew 155 million people were not living in pubs,
Yeah.
with saloon, but I still didn't know what it was like. Um, and so that was the biggest perception to me. And of course, I heard about safety things. I, everything is overblown when it comes to the media. So I looked into it where obviously our site is very data driven because that's what the Expatsi test is built on. And the truth is, Mexico is not as safe as the US as a whole. It isn't staggeringly less safe, but it is less safe. But we're from Birmingham, Alabama. We moved to Merida, Yucatan. Birmingham has less than 200,000 people, but the greater Birmingham area has a little over a million. Merida has 1.2 million. Merida has 2 murders per 100,000 people per year. Birmingham has 80.
What?
So it's a place that has 1/40th as many murders as the place I came from. And not because it's a podunk town, right? Not
Yeah.
because it's Mayberry, but because it's just safer. So I think that you have to compare sort of apples to apples. Mexico's gargantuan. And the US is gargantuan, and there are places that would be less safe and more safe. The difference is, I feel like the things that scare me in the US, like mass shootings, are so random. And so you're always on the lookout. I can't go to the movies in the US. It makes me feel like a sitting duck. I just can't stand it. I'll go to the drive-in theater, and I don't like to do that there. But here, there are no mass shootings, so I don't worry about things like that. There is a lot of drug-related violence, just like there is in the US. Most of the violence in Birmingham is drug-related. And I don't do drugs, buy drugs, sell drugs, anything related to it. And it doesn't mean that there aren't problems and corruption here. There absolutely are. But I find that it's so much more community oriented that when you face a problem, you reach out to your community and everyone sort of pitches in, like the way we imagine on Little House on the Prairie or like
Mhm.
Amish go. And I find that to be comforting.
Have you found a community of international people or locals that speak English? How is that going?
So when we first moved, we intended to socialize a lot. And then right after we moved was the Biden Trump debate, and our business just, and then the election, and then inauguration. So we have not been able to socialize as much as we would like because people just need help.
Yeah.
That said, you can't seem to avoid making friends here. My best girlfriend accosted me at Costco, and she is Mexican, but she has an American mom, so she's fully bilingual. And she heard me yell at my husband across the store, and she came up to ask if we could be friends, and so we
Yeah.
are. Another person I met at the mall, you can take your dog to the mall here, and we take our pit bull, and he had a like a Spuds McKenzie dog. I can't remember what they're called, bull terrier, I think.
Uh-huh.
We got to be friends at the mall, and so we made friends there, and so even though oh, and the other thing is we take Spanish classes, and so in Spanish class, of course, everyone there is from other places, so we make friends in Spanish class. So there are a lot of events for foreigners and for locals, but we haven't really attended those yet.
Hey there, just wanted to pop in. If you're listening to this and thinking about buying a home abroad, we can help. Fill out our buyer matching questionnaire and we'll connect you to a local English speaking real estate expert that is part of our network of trusted international agents. Our network spans over 25 countries, so there's a good chance wherever you're looking, we know someone that we can recommend. As a benefit to allowing us to refer you, we'll give you up to $1,000 when you close on your property. Fill out the buyer matching questionnaire. The link is in the description below. And let's help you find your dream home wherever you want to go in the world. Okay, let's get back to the interview. Let's talk about the Expatsi test because I think this is such a brilliant resource. What is it, and what have you learned from having 200,000 people take this test?
Thank you. So the idea is that you go through a series of questions. It's meant to be a thought starter, right? Don't find your number one result and just pick up and go. But it's meant to teach you the kind of questions that you want to ask yourself when you're making a move abroad. And so it asks why you're moving abroad, which is really for me. I like to keep track so that I'm speaking to our audience. It asks your budget. It asks the kind of weather you want, what parts of the world you're most interested in, the languages that you speak or that you're open to speaking, what kind of quality of healthcare safety infrastructure you're looking for, how you want to pay for your healthcare, if you want the country to rank highly for retirees or women or Black people or folks with kids or LGBTQ, etc. And then at the end, it gives you a list of your top 10 countries. The way that it works is that the questions that really send you down a path are your budget and the type of visa you plan to pursue. And as Vanessa, You can want to go somewhere all you want, but if you do not have a visa pass, you are not moving there. Retirees are not moving to the UK or Canada or Australia. It just is not going to happen. So when we first built the test, we really didn't have that knowledge about visas and budgets. We started to do deeper research and help people get matched based on these visa types and budgets. So people take it. Sometimes people take it more than once, of course, it's free. But the idea is that it lets you know what you're looking for if you've never put thought around it. A lot of people, especially who are coming to us now, just want out when they haven't been able to formulate, just like us, a formulated thought of where is out. And if you aren't deep into the American expat community, you don't know that there's the DAF visa in the Netherlands or that people go on the D7 in Portugal and you could still work, or there's the elective visa in Italy or whatever else. And at that point, almost every country is equal. You hear little bits of things, there's a ton of misinformation. And so our idea is to bring them in at that point, and then we walk through all 6 stages of moving abroad, and then we try to provide partners and services in all 6 stages.
Brilliant. So what have you learned from the data? What is the data telling you?
There have been some big changes. In general, the reason people wanna move abroad is for adventure and personal growth, which I think is very positive. Over time, 60 to 70% of people choose that response, and they're allowed to choose multiples. After the election, that dropped way down, and the US is too conservative, took the lead. We are going to move a lot of progressive people out. I personally have the goal to move 1,000,000 Americans out of the US, especially folks who have the greatest need. But without a doubt, that's what we're seeing in the data. It's a very small percentage that say the US is too liberal, like 4%. And uh, generally, we have a huge number who say that the US is too divided. Now, we have an other category, and we let people obviously write in. And after the first year, there were so many people that wrote in gun violence that we added it to the quiz. And now, far more than half of people say that one reason that they want to leave is to avoid the threat of gun violence.
Wow, that's heartbreaking, isn't it? More than 50% want to leave because of the gun violence.
Yes.
Wow. What are some of the top countries when you're talking to people? Where are the main hotspots people are considering?
It's Portugal. I hear it in my sleep. We do scouting trips for folks. And I just added, we're doing 11 trips to Portugal a year. It is so popular. And it's interesting because it got popular because of some very immigration friendly policies. They had a deal where you didn't have to pay tax for 10 years. Then you only had to pay 10% for 10 years. Then it was 20% for 10 years. And now they just got rid of it altogether. You could get a golden visa by buying a home. The home could be pretty affordable and everywhere. Then it could be pretty affordable at only some places. Then it couldn't be affordable. Then it could only
Mhm.
be not affordable and not in many places. And now they got rid of that. So, despite the fact that they have removed these, it's a testimony to like how long it takes to get the word out about something. I think these policies have been in place about 15 years. And it's only now that they're removing them that it's starting to gain sort of mass market appeal. But I understand why it's popular. Phenomenal. We went last March with our first tour group, and it was the first time I led a group there, and I'd never been. They knew that,
Uh-huh.
but it is very special. I think it appeals a lot to folks who are from the South and the Midwest because it
Mhm.
has that sort of friendly pace that those parts of the country at least used to have. And it's charming and beautiful. It is more affordable. Obviously, if you live in a nice apartment in the city center of Lisbon, it's a world class European capital, so don't expect some $800 rent. But it is much more affordable than the US, especially for things like produce and services. So I can understand it. Other countries that are popular are Spain and Mexico and Costa Rica. And then we have a pretty good number of up and comers. Like I have always felt like Albania, Slovenia, Estonia, Uruguay were going to be those are the underrated choices.
Mhm.
And we are seeing a lot of growth in Albania and Uruguay, especially Albania, because Americans can go there for a year as tourists, which allows people the ability to go now while they sort out what's going on. I have the strong belief that it's impossible to make these huge life changes when your heart rate is up here and your blood pressure is up here. It's just hard to think and decide, do I do I need to go back to nursing school, or do I need to cash out my 401k and buy a home in Hungary or whatever? I was just like panicking. But you can go someplace like Albania, live on $1,000, $1,200 a month and unclench and get back to a more neutral state with your nervous system and things like that. Not to get too woo, but and then Uruguay, especially for folks with LGBTQ kids, especially trans kids. So that's something that's really scaring parents right now.
Yeah.
And we have an expert there in Uruguay who has a non-binary child and loves it. Uruguay decriminalized homosexuality in 1934. They never criminalized drugs, and they are a stable democracy. Now, it's not cheap to live in Uruguay compared to Brazil or Argentina. It's more in the line of Costa Rica, but it still would be more affordable than what you'd expect in the US. And it's time zone friendly. It's 2 hours ahead of East Coast. So those are some countries that I think will be growing in popularity.
Interesting. So I spoke with Mohammed Benis from Art and Capital yesterday for the podcast. I'll link that episode below, or yours might come out first, but when it comes out, I'll add the link. Anyways,
Wonderful.
he and I were talking about Portugal and about the golden visa and how that's changed. So I just wanted to plug that because I think that was a really interesting conversation and really good insight into how some people use that path. And yeah, I lived in the Algarve for a little while and it's beautiful. It wasn't our good long-term fit. We hopped from there to Spain, but I can definitely see how Americans would resonate with that area. You mentioned a lot of Spanish-speaking countries as well, which makes a lot of sense. Anybody from the South in the States is they probably had at least a couple years of high school Spanish. At least they have a bit of a running start versus
Yeah,
maybe
I do.
Albania, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not me. I took French.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
It helps me with reading Spanish, but every time I'm trying to think of a word, I think of the French word first. But yeah, all the smart people took Spanish. I don't know what I was thinking.
I
I
mean,
was
it's romantic.
yes, I was
Yeah,
thinking I love that was it.
exactly. We're talking about cost of living, and I've been through this having lived in Costa Rica as well and Italy. And you go online, you go to those online calculators to estimate your cost of living and your experience as an American who is moving to this country, kind of understanding that Americans shop a little bit differently, different
Yes.
expectations about certain things. How do you look at those calculators and are they useful at all to you, or do you round up to a certain percentage point to get close to what the reality on the ground is gonna be like?
That's such a good question because we do use them a lot, especially we go live on TikTok a couple times a week. And when we do, people ask questions and they'll say, how much does it cost to live in da da da? And I'm like, where do you live close to it? What's the biggest city you live close to in the US? And we use like the Expatsi calculator to calculate it to give them an idea. And it's hard for me to say, but I can compare Birmingham to Merida, for example. And so according to Expatsi, I think Merida is about 30% cheaper. And I don't think that's too far off. The
Mhm.
big thing in at least where we live, Merida is really nice, right? There are a lot of people with a lot of money here. We are certainly not in the upper class here in Merida by any means. So, is that goods cost close to the city as what they cost north of the border, as they say. But services are much less expensive and rents are much less expensive. And so it averages out to about that. I think the smart way to handle it is to adjust what you spend money on. I know that's tough when you have little kids or things like that, and you have certain things. You have to have Cheerios and Pepperidge Farm goldfish or whatever. But if you're just grown folks, then at home, maybe I would have spent money on, I don't know, consumer goods to make me happy. And here I might spend money on services instead, you know?
Yeah, and I could say in my experience, the housing, when they talk about the median housing or what a typical apartment, Americans probably want more space. You're probably looking for a slightly bigger place in my experience with people. They want a bigger kitchen. They don't want a little closet
Yes.
kitchen. That's a big
Yeah,
deal,
real
especially in
fridge.
Europe. Exactly. Want a big fridge, room for the second fridge. There are just some things that for Americans just are par for the course that aren't normal everywhere else. Dryers are another example. And then
Right.
considering the cost of the electricity to run the dryer. So you can either adjust and not have a dryer, or you need to keep that in mind when you're figuring out what your cost of living is gonna be in a new place. I think you probably are gonna be on the higher side of some of those expense categories. At least that's how I've experienced it, but I'm curious what you think about that.
And I would agree with that. If somebody here says, if you still go to Costco and if you do this and if you do that, but I find that and I don't shortchange myself on certain I love to cook. And I love to cook a huge variety of foods, not just American food and Mexican food, but I like to make a lot of different kinds of Asian food. And so it's a big reason why I decided to visit Mexico first instead of Costa Rica, because I knew how expensive imported foods were there and how hard they might be to get. Whereas Merida is big enough and I don't know, diverse enough
Yeah.
that there are big Asian, it's not like being at home in the US, but there's an Asian market and things like that. And we do have a big house to me, and it's nicer than my house at home. I will say, well, it has a beautiful pool. It has a big, oh, here, I'll just show you.
Yeah.
Like a
Oh,
big,
yeah.
it, it's very, very modern. It does have, oh, it does have a washer and it has a steamer. And then it will tell you, it'll make all your clothes this big if you run it. So we just hang them. My gosh, it's the tropics. They dry in no time. It has two
Yeah.
big bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and it's in a lovely neighborhood with great neighbors. Close to it's suburban.
Mhm.
Um, our rent is $1,200 a month, and even our old apartment, it was a nice apartment overlooking the park, and we loved it. But since the pandemic, it's $3,000 a month in Birmingham. Give me a break. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Oh, I forgot to mention my place is also furnished.
Hey, wow, 1,200 a month furnished with the pool.
Sweet. Yeah, yeah. Because it's not just furnished, like, it has a rice cooker and spoons and sheets and towels. Like, we could have shown up with our toothbrush and moved in.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I think that's such a great example of the cost of living difference. Amazing. So one of you mentioned briefly about taking people on tours. So I want to talk more about that. So what are some of the considerations? And by the way, this is how Jen and I met. Jen brought a group to the Costa Brava, and Solana Global Realty did a tour for properties in the area. But Jen, beyond looking at real estate, what are some of the other highlights of these tours that you do?
So, the idea is that you're trying to experience the area as a local as much as you can. There are tons of trips out there where you can go and visit and see every landmark and every museum and every church and whatever else. But if you try to move to a place after you do that, it will be the biggest regret. I say it's like getting married on the first date because everybody's on their best behavior. Money is no object. It's just a different life. So what we do is we visit places and tour neighborhoods and towns that are livable, places where people like to live, that are affordable, that are diverse, that have markets and things like that. And so we tour around, we check out public transportation, the market, the pharmacy, normal day to day stuff. And then we tour real estate, like you were saying. And the idea behind it is not to for you to sign and this is the place for you. If it is, that's great. But the idea is that we help you build a relationship with local providers, local realtors, and give you an idea of how people in this town live, an average place, to see if that's what you were envisioning for your life or not. We also do a big seminar at the beginning with immigration attorney, tax accountant, somebody who can talk about healthcare and things like that and answer questions. We would love to be experts on moving to every country. We aren't even experts on moving to Mexico. But what we can do is meet lots and lots of experts on moving to different places. And when we do that, we try to make connections. People want to know if they should sell their house before or after they move, or how are the taxes going to be different if they're in Catalonia versus Andalusia, which is very different. And all sorts of things like that. And that way they can sit down and get their questions answered and allay some of their fears, but also potentially walk away with a plan to get their move going.
Perfect. So let's talk about that. So the plan. So there are the people who dream of leaving and talk about it and think about it and all of that. And then there are ones that actually sell their stuff and get on the plane.
Right.
What's the tipping point and what are some of the things that get somebody from thinking about it to doing it?
So we have these 6 stages that we've identified to moving abroad, first of all. And the first is ideation. And that's what you're talking about. Most people stay in ideation forever. And that's just the idea of, I could move abroad. And maybe it's fun and inspiration. And and I think a number of people will. It just can be a very long cycle. We've had clients where they said we've been working on this for 40 years because they knew that they wanted to go to wherever and they've been dreaming of it their whole life and they're planning their money away and things like that. We ourselves, like I said, we planned to look over 10 years and that was after we had been talking about it for 4 years. The next stage is planning. And that is where people always wanna skip it, but that is the part where I say, "How are you gonna get there? How are you gonna support yourself? How are you gonna eat?" And sometimes people are paralyzed at this point because they have too many ways to go. Because 'cause they're like, "I have $3.2 million in savings, and that isn't enough for us to retire in San Francisco, but I could retire in"
Lots of other places.
Yeah, or so I could do that, or my job isn't work from anywhere, but they really need me. So maybe I could talk them into it. Or maybe I could get them to transfer me to the Verona office. Or I could always do it freelance or start my own business. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Okay. So let's pick. You've got to pick one of these paths because the visas match the path.
Yeah.
So that is one way they get stuck. The other way they get stuck is I have no path. I have no skills. I have no experience. I have no education and I have no money. And I relate to that as part of the path more myself. I've been ups and downs. And so I try to help them start planning anyway. And so we talk about here's how much it might cost to go to school abroad. And so you could train in exactly the things that that country needs and have a leg up by going to school there. So much easier to get a job when you have the alumni centers and all of those things that you have when you're newly graduating from a program. Or here are all the countries in Europe that need construction trades. If you can get an apprenticeship, um, so on and so forth. Or let's talk about what would it take for you to get $15,000 socked away and start your own business. And imagine what I talk to a lot of people about is they'll have a remote job and it will pay pretty well by US standards, $8,000, let's say, which
Mhm.
is not enough to get rich on in the US by any means, but you can live. But they're trapped to it because their lives are so expensive that they aren't able to put away very much every month. And they can't conceive of anything other than I have to look for remote jobs and send online job applications. And that is wrong. That's just not never going to work. There aren't that many work from anywhere jobs. They're incredibly competitive and no applying for jobs online. I just don't feel like it works for anyone. But imagine that instead of trying to find a job like you have that makes $9,000 a month where you can work from anywhere, instead you came up with a business idea that earns you $3,000 a month. What could you do? What are 30 things that you could do that would earn you $100 a month? Is that right? Yeah. That would earn you $100 a month. Could you do one thing every day that earns you $100 a month? And most people can if they really put their mind to it. They have to be creative. So maybe it's make content or they have know about a certain topic or it's take contract projects and things like that. And so I explained to them that in most cases they can live better on $3,000 a month in many countries than they can live on $9,000 a month in the US. And so if they can build that path while at the same time, let's say they will give themselves 2 years, if they can put together a plan that puts 15 or $20,000 in the bank while they are building up a business on the weekends that could get to $3,000 a month, then they can become a digital nomad in a number of countries or
Right.
self-employed visa.
And something else to keep in mind with that. So let's say you're making 9,000 a month in the US and then you move to Spain, Catalonia, and you become a fiscal resident here. Guess what? Your tax rate just went from 30% to 50.
You get a lot for your taxes.
You do get a lot for your taxes, health insurance, just the health. uh, the exchange rate when we moved here was like 80 cents to the dollar. And I said that was the 1,000 or 1,500 that we spent on health insurance. So it balances out. Yes, I lose money when I transfer it, but I'm not paying that money for health insurance. So
Right.
it doesn't matter. So those are things that you think about. But just, I think the tax piece is so important, thinking about how are you making your money? And
Yeah.
because the US is going to follow you everywhere. That's one
Yeah. Oh,
special
yeah.
about being
Oh,
a
yeah.
US citizen is you don't get away from it. So it is a different conversation talking to US citizens who wanna move abroad versus, like, UK citizens
Right.
who wanna go to Dubai, for example, and start a
Right.
business. Well, yeah, it's tax-free for you, not tax-free for the US citizen. So it's something to keep in mind.
It's strange.
Yeah. Okay, so people go through the steps, and you have a membership program that
Mhm.
helps them navigate that. Talk about how the membership program helps them go through these steps.
So I've been wanting to build a program where we could keep higher quality content that was funded, and we ended up launching it a couple of days before the election. I wanna be clear, I absolutely thought Kamala was gonna win, I just never even crossed my mind. But I said, "People are really waiting on the election, and once the election's over, they'll get back to thinking about moving abroad or the other folks won't take it well, and they'll make a big stink." I had no idea what was about to happen. But the idea behind the membership is that we do walk people through all the stages. By the way, the rest of them are exploration, paperwork, logistics, and settling. And so we walk everyone through the stages. And then we also we have a network now of 60 or 70 experts around the world who help. Some of them are professionals. So they actually help you find real estate or get visas. But then others are just local expats who are like, you know what? I'm in Albania. Here's how I did it. And I'm happy to help you along. And so you get discounts on sessions with them and with me. I do a brainstorm session that helps people map out these plans. Then we do a webinar every week. So that's free for members and we charge the general public. So last week, I think we did healthcare, navigating healthcare. And so we had a global insurance company, and we also had our expert hunter who did all the healthcare procurement for the Obama administration. So We have that, and then, of course, they get discounts on our conference. Vanessa, we got listen,
You got
we
a
got
lot going on, girl.
so much going on. But then also every Tuesday night, we have a fireside chat where we just sit and talk. And people can come and ask like one question and not have to buy a full consult to just come and say, "Hey, how I can't figure out how big of a dog I can take on La Compagnie airline or whatever." And we'll try to figure it out together. So that's what the membership is all about.
I love this. This touches my soul because I can't tell you. So I've moved out of the US twice. This last time was 8 years ago, or however long, whatever 2016 was, lost track. And so
Been
many
a
people,
long 8 years.
it's been a lot. My hair will show it. But a lot of people will call me and say, God, I wish I could do it too. How did you do it? And I'm happy to have those conversations, but I don't have the resources or tools to take somebody through all of those steps. So I'm so glad that I can point them to you and say, here's somebody, no matter what country you're thinking about, who can help you navigate those steps. And then when you're ready to talk about real estate, we can talk.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
love that. I love that. Is there something that people don't think about that you really think they should as they're going through this process?
I think the biggest thing is knowing yourself. Moving abroad can solve a lot of problems. I know that people will say the opposite, like you're going to take your problems. If you have problems in the US, you're going to take your problems wherever. And some of them, yes. Some of them, yes. The internal ones you are going to take with you. If you are uh, not dealing well with reality, if you are not emotionally regulated, if you cannot handle frustrations, it is going to be so much worse in another country. We go through this on our scouting trips, and I keep making the rules like more and more stringent because I'm like, listen, you have got to hold your own hand. You have got to deal with frustrations. You cannot come and lose your mind on my staff because it rained or the train was late. Get it. Pick a struggle is what I always want to say. Pick a struggle. You can either flee democracy or you can bitch about the train being late. I can't do both. And so I think that knowing yourself is a big part of it. Now, external challenges, if you can identify which of your problems are your own doing and which of your problems are the system, we'd all be successful then. But that's the trick. If your problems are the system, and you have to be clear, it has to be the US system. It can't just be systems in general because
Patriarchy
that's
as
what
a
it's
whole,
like.
right?
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out, you know what, I think that ultimately my problem is, or what I want for my kids, too late for me. But I wish that I could have been able to buy a house on a normal salary, put my kids through school. That's something that I will tell you, my grandfather, I'm 53. My grandfather was an elevator repairman with two kids, and his wife didn't work. She'd wrap presents at Christmas at the mall. And they owned two homes, two cars, and had everything they needed. Nothing fancy, but so when my mom and uncle needed to leave the nest, they put them in a little starter home. And so they were able to start building their lives without paying rent. I can't like when we were back in Birmingham, I thought Brett and I, my husband and I, both have multiple degrees, advanced degrees. We have really good jobs. And I live in the exact same kind of house that my grandfather had as an elevator repairman, exactly the exact same kind of neighborhood in the exact same city, a 3-2 ranch house from the exact same era. And I thought, that can't be right. And I know it's worse for people younger than me. Don't get me wrong. I know it's much harder for millennials and Gen Z, but nonetheless. So if those are the kind of things that you would like to get out of moving abroad, I think that's worthwhile. The other thing is you have to be willing to understand community over individual.
Mm.
US is the most individualistic country. And if you love, that's awesome, but you should stay there because no place else is that individualistic. Conversely, if you're starved for community like I was, then you can absolutely find it in another country, especially in a warm country where people are also warm.
Oh, that's such a good point. I know we're running short on time, but there's one other thing I really want to talk to you about. Did you see the article on CNN about the woman who moved to Spain from
Girl,
America and then
girl,
decided it wasn't for her? And so she had to move back. I can't believe that took up space on CNN. But let's talk about I'll have to find the article and I'll link to it because
okay.
most people don't know what we're talking about. But okay,
So
so go ahead,
yeah,
talk about it.
they were her, and then there was another one in December, and it was a woman who had moved to France. And then I'm telling you, it was the same. They had the exact same personality. Those 2 women. And the one in France, she was like, first of all, she was from San Francisco, then she lived in London, then she went to Nîmes, France.
Which
And if
is a
you
tiny little south of
crazy.
France,
Exactly.
local kind of place.
Like, so she was mad because she would go to the same restaurant every night or every week, and they wouldn't make her a martini. She was all peeved about that. And then she said the celery in the market was wilted. Anyway, and it just cracked me up. It was the most entitled anyway, so then this girl in Spain, exact same thing. She was mad. First, she gets mad because it's fried food. She's mad because it's seafood. I'm like, girl, you moved to northern Spain.
Yeah.
If there is not a way to fit an olive, a fish, an egg, and mayonnaise and a pickle on something, then you ain't getting it. And like it just what
And then stores were closed in the afternoon.
because of siesta. Like you can't just battle the whole country. And bought a house. And that's listen,
Right.
I'm in the biz, but I'm sure you tell people,
You need to
you're like,
know.
yes, is it the right country? Is it the right city? Is it the right neighborhood? Can I deal with stores being closed in the afternoon or whatever? And then if that's a problem, why on earth would you go to the tiniest community on the northern coast when there are all these vibrant and popular communities where you can
I was in Barcelona on Sunday. I had Ethiopian food and I had a vegan matcha latte and a gluten-free vegan brownie, okay?
of
You
course you
can't
did.
find that an hour away where I live in Girona, but you can go an hour down to Barcelona and you can have everything you want. The whole world is your oyster. Those places exist outside of New York City and San Francisco, but yeah, you can't move to some whole hodunk town in the middle of nowhere. You couldn't do
No,
that in the United States. Good
no,
luck
of course
finding
not.
good celery in Iowa in February.
It's
You
the
know what I
most
mean?
rainmakers, like, personality I've ever seen. Like, I moved to the farm. Why can't I get, like, my Upper East Side amenity? It's
Right.
great,
So I
great.
think there's like a bit of a the lesson there is reality check. You're moving to another country, things are going to be different and things are probably going to not work as quickly. You're probably going we always joke in Spain, you can get one thing accomplished a day. When it was like that in Costa Rica as well. You need to go to an
Yeah,
office, you gotta get a stamp here, then you gotta go over here to get this stamp, and then this, and so you've accomplished one task in a day.
right.
That's just how it goes because things are gonna close at 1 o'clock. So, yeah, between 10 and 1 basically to get it done, or 2, 1, 10 and 2. Th those are the trade-offs. So, like you said, you gotta pick your battles, right? Do you want democracy or do you want stores open at 3 p.m.?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly, and you don't have it doesn't have to be your last place. That's my last thought. Go somewhere and spend you can stay in Spain for 3 months as a tourist. Go to Spain and stay for 3 months as a tourist before you spend a minimum of $20,000 to uproot yourself, fly yourself and your dogs and all your stuff and put get a lease for X amount of time and get an immigration attorney and all these things you have to do. Go and have a nice 3-month trip, spend a month in Spain, a month in Italy, and a month in Portugal
yeah.
and see what you like. And then walk through that door when you have some clarity about what you're doing.
I would also say take advantage of the Facebook groups. In all of these
Yeah.
communities, there are the
Okay.
most incredible local expat Facebook groups, you can find your people. And what I
Yeah.
love, I've lived in 4 different countries, we moved 10 times in 10 years. I've found community so much faster outside of the United States, and I have
Yes,
found people who
agree.
have shared, like,
Agree.
there's something so magical about people who actively, with effort and passion, choose to live in a place, and you
Yes.
end up having some shared values. You're not gonna love everybody, but you're gonna find your people
I
more
think
than
I
if
think the
you
same
just
thing.
go to some town in the United States and that's where everybody grew up.
It's like being college freshmen again.
Yeah, you're right, you're right. People are
Everyone's just
very
so, like,
open
excited to
to
meet each
making new friends.
Yeah.
I remember we moved to Boston when I was pregnant, and that was really hard. I joined a mom group. We're like mid-30s. These women went to high school together. They have friends. They don't need new friends. They're good. You know what I mean? But then you move to Costa Rica or Spain or wherever, and everybody's fresh and open and curious, and it's a really beautiful thing. But you have to be open and curious yourself and just put in the effort. Jen, thank you so much. Thank you for being such an incredible resource for Americans who are looking for a new life abroad. I appreciate it. I think this was a really inspiring conversation. Heck, I'm inspired and I already live abroad. I'm going to include all of the links and resources that we referenced in the show notes. Check those out there and definitely reach out to Jen and her team if you're starting the exploration process. And of course, if you are already abroad or you're ready to make a purchase, make sure to fill out our buyer matching questionnaire so that we can connect you with a local real estate expert who can help you with your home buying process. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Live and Invest Abroad. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share this, and hit that like button. And until next time, keep exploring, keep investing, and keep living the life you've always dreamed of. Cheers.